The last guy here is probably the most realistic. We've talked about him once or twice before, and that's Jose Ramirez, the third baseman in Cleveland. He's 28, 29 in September, signed through 2023 on club options worth a total of $24 million over the last 2 years. He's a switch hitter, fairly equal abilities from both sides of the plate. Average third baseman, he's flashed better, who later in his career might be able to move to first base or a corner outfield spot, but the bat plays wherever you want it to. Now, Cleveland isn't going to sign him beyond the 23 club option, so eventually a trade will be strongly considered. And since that org is very good with arms but don't have a lot of them near ready, there'd probably have to be at least one high-end arm involved in the deal. This is basically a Flaherty deal on steroids. If it costs Kelenic or Rodriguez, you're passing. But I don't think it has to. But I do think one of the top six has to be involved. Kirby, Hancock, Marte, plus a Trammell or a Williamson, and maybe in addition, Deloach, Brash, Stout, Mako, guys like that. Right now, Marte probably has more value in general, just in a vacuum, than Kirby and Hancock, just because their seasons have been kind of slow to get off the ground because the Mariners are taking it slow with them as part of the development program this year after having last year off, and Hancock's college season last year was abbreviated even. He pitched into March, and that was it. A couple of weeks into March, and that was it. So, we'll see what happens. And that could change as the season, and we've seen Kirby starting to stretch it out a little bit, and eventually we'll see Hancock do that too. But Marte, he's one of the top 30 prospects in baseball. So if it's Marte and Williamson and Trammell, you're talking about a top 30 prospect, a top 75 prospect, and probably a top 150 prospect for 2+ years of Ramirez. It's literally twice what they got for Lindor, maybe more. If I had to settle on one of the above for the most preferred, like which, I'm assuming no Kelenic, no Rodriguez, no Gilbert in any of these deals, I would probably lean toward Flaherty, but I would also think that Woodruff would be a great get. I don't think it's all that realistic, at least right now, but we'll see how things change in the next 5-6 months or so. Or a year, maybe next deadline, it's different. Maybe not this coming offseason, but the offseason after that, Milwaukee's willing to discuss Corbin Burns or Brandon Woodruff. I would think Flaherty first, then Woodruff, then Ramirez. I also think Ramirez is probably the most realistic. If we're talking about what's most likely, because none of them are likely, it's probably Ramirez. One thing I want to address here while we're talking about this thing trading and prospects is the idea, and I see this on it's a social media issue. I see this from fans on social media all the time. The idea that a team wouldn't trade one of its best players, an Aaron Nola, a Brandon Woodruff, or Jose Ramirez, or whatever it is, for anything but the other team's number one prospect is garbage. You guys know this. It's garbage. Because number one prospects, organizations' number one prospects, are not created equal. I went over this idea from the Mariners standpoint back in late February, early March, and I'm going to ask David to put the link in the post at Patreon so you can click on it and see how many Mariners prospects I think would rank number one in other organizations at the time anyway. Maybe it's changed a little now, but at the time anyway. Jared Kelenic, Julio Rodriguez, whoever you think the best prospect in the organization is, would be number one in a lot of other organizations. And there are a lot of other organizations, number one, who wouldn't rank in the Mariners' top 3 or 4 or 5. But I see it a lot. Fans thinking, hey, if it's not your number one prospect, no way. Never, ever, ever. Well, I'm sorry to tell you, but the number one prospect for about half the league wouldn't crack the top 3 for Seattle. And some clubs' number one doesn't crack the top 5 in the top systems of baseball. So there you go. There's no inherent value in being a team's number one prospect. I guess that's kind of